Interview. We're
Yeah.
doing a
You're
podcast.
right.
This is
It's a
sick. It
podcast.
looks nice, huh?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, cool.
Okay. All right. Thanks for joining us today, Martin. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, King.
Yeah. So maybe you could start things off. Tell us a little bit about where you worked and what you did there.
Mhm. It's been a journey. No one really falls and chooses into freight forwarding. Everyone kind of falls into it. So out of college, I studied international business. Literally Googled international jobs. Next thing you know it, I'm working at Expeditors, typing in customs entries till 7 p.m. on a Friday night. So that's pretty much where my freight forwarding career started.
Yeah.
After that, I worked for different companies out there, CH Robinson, account management, main freight as a sales manager, did sales as well. And, came upon Expedock as well, more so on the technology side of things. So it's been a journey, and it's had its ups and downs, but it's been really rewarding. So I'm glad I kind of fell into this.
Yeah. Maybe we could start off with a few of the funner questions. So first question is, what's the craziest thing you've experienced at a freight conference?
Freight conferences are funny. These things are marathons. Not sure if anyone's ever been to one. It's like a 3-4 day speed dating thing. So you're talking to all these people. Everyone goes out at night, makes friends, potential business colleagues. And, you always hear these funny stories. And one that comes to mind in particular is, and there's always that one guy or one person that takes it
That
a little
one
bit.
guy.
Yeah, there's always that one guy that takes it a little bit too far. So in a recent conference, we had a boat cocktail reception, and obviously this person had too much to drink, was kind of talking around, kind of scaring people, guys, girls, and right off the back, as soon as we got off the boat, he had to.
Scaring people. What do you mean by scaring people?
Well, going up to them, obviously he's intoxicated, kind of yelling. He jumped into the jacuzzi, and then the boat staff was kind of telling him to get out because he had potential to fall into the ocean. So as soon as we got off the boat, he was confronted by the conference, heads and leaders. And next day, he was out of the conference. They kicked him out of the hotel, and he's been banned for life. He's banned for life now.
Yeah.
He probably doesn't have a job with his freight forwarder anymore because he wasn't the owner of it for sure.
Yeah, no, it's funny because a lot of that always happens, and all of a sudden, in these WhatsApp chats, right, you suddenly just see someone get kicked off, and they're like, this person was not aligned with our freight forwarding association's community guidelines, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So next time you send someone from a conference that isn't you, make sure you give them the talk because you don't want to be that person.
What's the wildest thing that anyone has ever shipped, legal or illegal?
There's always those stories out there, just of things being shipped. I know of freight forwarders that have accidentally, shipped drugs, overseas and unknowingly have shipped it. So, for example, I was speaking to this freight forwarder recently. They were importing bananas into from. Turns out there was, drugs within that container, and it's crazy how well these things are tracked because from the details they told me, as soon as it arrived into the port, there were cops there to review the container and confiscate it. So there were officials, of course, there at the freight forwarder, the shipping agent, and of course the import agent from a freight forwarding side that had to answer these questions. And of course, they didn't know. But yeah, this stuff happens. How else do you think this stuff gets around the world? So be wary of who you work with.
Bananas from how are they hiding it in there?
I have no idea. So within the crates, maybe. I mean, I'm sure there's different ways I think to hide.
So you always hear these stories about, pirates in the ocean stealing containers or like just like, someone stealing the truck. Out of curiosity, have you ever had a shipment you were working on stolen? And what did you do about it?
In my freight forwarding career, I personally haven't had anything stolen. I've heard some horror stories, to be honest, when you don't take enough security to kind of protect your yard. Containers are broken into overnight and taken. It's crazy how these people kind of figure out the information. They'll call like they're potentially a customer just to kind of get more details on the BL and what's inside the shipment. maybe they talk to the junior level executive or operator, they give the information out over the phone, and next thing you know it, you're down $1 million and the customer doesn't have insurance, and then you're in a lawsuit. uh,
Wow.
this one story I did hear a couple of years ago was, it was a long holiday weekend. It might have been Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a Monday. It was a 3-day weekend. And that Monday, when nobody was working, it was a skeleton crew working at this big 3PL warehouse. So what happened was that with that skeleton crew, they had individuals approach the 3PL with guns, held everyone kind of hostage while
Wow.
they essentially robbed the 3PL. And what they were after were specific technology, phones, and products that they were successfully at, kind of stealing. So just kind
Wow.
of crazy to hear about this type of stuff. You never would think would happen on a holiday. And you just got to have the security, and make sure you work with the right freight forwarders that do have the security.
Armed robberies in supply chain.
Yes, it
Wow.
happens. It happened.
So, talking about tough shipments to work on and tough situations, tell us about the worst shipper you have ever worked with.
Man, right off the back, I can think of
You
one.
already
I
know
already
it.
there's always that one shipper, right? And kind of dealing with importers and exporters, everyone kind of has their own different types of business practices. This is probably back when I was like year 5 and year 6 in freight forwarding. And of course, those are smaller to medium sized clients that kind of get quotes from many different forwarders, and they like to kind of pinch as much as they can on the actual margins and how much they're paying for the shipment. So there's this one particular customer, and this customer was importing watches, and every time we quoted, you would get a phone call from the person asking for a deduction. One time I spent probably around an hour disputing $20 on a shipment.
$20.
$20. So we kind of
Ridiculous.
saw the trend on this specific customer, and we recognized the trends that every time we quoted him out, he would want to reductions to his quote. So you know what we did, King?
What did you do?
So we started marking that thing up 100%, 120%
120% margin.
margin, knowing he was going to request those 2 additional deductions. So prior to this strategy, we were making 5% margin per shipment. Now, when we would start at that 100%, we would deduct 30%, and then another 30%. So we went from 5% margin to now 40 to 60% margin, because we kind of figured out, his trends. So I mean, just kind of looking out for his business. I see, but yeah,
You're kind of taking advantage of him then.
well, hey, man, like if we're spending that amount of time, we're getting his stuff, moved across the board, and it kind of makes sense to do it that way. And plus, we gave him great service.
Yeah, I mean, he's negotiating with you for a whole hour, right? You win on some shipments.
Oh yes, of course.
So ever since you started in the freight industry, right? You've been in it for a while. What's changed?
It's always changing. There's always a strike going on. There's always something that could potentially, affect the rates. I know we had the 2020, 2021. Everyone was paying $30,000 per container. Sales reps were on cloud 9 because they were making so much money that they weren't making prior. That's something I've never seen before. The following year, all these freight forwarders are cutting commission structures because these salespeople are making more than executives. So, I mean, the thing about freight forwarding, it's always ever changing. You never know where the ocean freights are going to be, but technology has always been a big one. You have the big flex ports of the world releasing a big container. Now everybody has it. So I think the question is, what's going to be, the next big thing out there. So, I mean, there's freight forwarding. There's always something different that's going to happen. So you just got to be prepared for it. And really curious to see where this industry goes within the next 10 years.
Absolutely. Well, that's pretty much it for our questions, Martin. Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming out here to our studio.
King, it's been a pleasure. I'm always willing to kind of come out here and talk freight forwarding, tech, whatever we got to do. It's always a good time.